Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. In this video, I'm going to explain the new Ohuhu color numbering system and show you how to use it to get your best results. And don't worry if you have the old style markers, because I will link to new color charts in the video description that you can download and you can cross-reference with the markers you already have. So if you want to get better blends, stick around, because not only are we going to do some blending demos, we're also going to make a Christmas card. So I want to start off by showing you the new color charts. This video is sponsored by Ohuhu, by the way, and I will have links to everything I'm showing you in the video description. These are the new color swatches, and you can see they are a beautiful rainbow array of colors, and they are much more smooth and logical than, say, their old version of the color charts. And the reason they have changed this up is because they want to make it easier for people to blend. So let's take a look at how the color numbers have changed. If you have any of the new markers, you buy a set, like say tomorrow, or you get a set for Christmas, you're going to see that on the color chart, you're going to have the new number first in the largest font. Then you're going to have the name, and then you're going to have the old color number here in a smaller font. Now, some of the colors have changed color families, like say celery, YG111. That used to be G060. We have some that have gone from completely different, like from yellows to reds. We have some that have gone from greens to grays, and it's just to make it a little bit more logical for your mixing. So let's take that celery color here, YG111, and let's explain how the colors are now. So I'm just going to use that. We've got YG, that is your color family, YG. Then we have 111. So your first number is going to be your blending group. Now, they call it color saturation, but I think the easiest thing to think about this first digit is your color blending group, or your immediate color family. And then the second two numbers are going to reference how dark they are within that color family. So a 0 would be super duper light, and a 16 would be the darkest that is available in that color family. So since this is 11, it's kind of on the darker side, but this one category is just overall fairly light, so it only goes so dark. So that's why I like to think of it in terms like this, because it makes it a lot easier to understand. So then if we wanted to go to our next darkest color in that family, it would be YG, same family. We want to stick with that same family. And this would be 1, so same blending group, same, they call it saturation, but just think of it as keep these first digits together, and they're going to have the same color undertones. And then this last color is 12, so that's a little bit darker. Okay, we can see right there, it's a little bit darker. Those are going to blend really well together. And then next, if we want to have the most smoothest blend possible, we'll go to the next one in the line, and that would be YG1. Remember, we're staying in that same color undertone group, 13. But the way you're going to see it on your cap or on your chart is YG113. Okay, and that is a little bit darker. The value is darker. So this is going to be how light or dark it is. This is going to be your overall blending kind of undertone blending group, and this is your overall big color family group. Okay, so if I want to blend these together, it's going to be a piece of cake. I can even just go right in with my darkest color, then go to my medium color, and go to my lightest color. Now, greens blend pretty easily. Greens, yellows, browns, those all blend pretty easily. It's not that difficult to do that. And I can repeat those steps if I want to intensify my color, or if I want to, if I didn't feel like it was smooth enough, I can just keep repeating those steps until I'm happy with it. I could use a variety of different techniques. But the greens blend pretty easily, so I don't even really need too much help there. But let's say we've got something tricky. We've got a red, purple, blue, or pink. Those colors are difficult to blend. So here I have some of the red violets, one of the trickiest colors we can find, and we've got 3 different tones. Now, 2 of the numbers are real close together. The other one is a little bit of a jump, but they would be the closest ones we would find on our chart here. Well, I guess we could do RV25, RV28, and RV29. That would be a little bit closer together. And then it jumps up to RV212. So maybe I'll find the RV25 and make things a little bit easier on ourselves. So RV25, RV28, RV29. And then if we did want to go a little darker, we have the RV212. So let's take a look at what these colors would look like. I'm going to start with this lightest one, RV25. So by spreading out the numbers, it helps us understand how the colors are going to go. And then we have RV28. That's the next closest one. So undertones are the same. They get darker as the number goes up. Then we have RV29. See, this is just one step darker. They all have the same undertones, one step darker, so one step higher, so it's a little bit darker in value. They call it brightness, but just think of light or dark. And then this one here, which is RV212. Now we're jumping up. We're jumping up 3 notches, so that's quite a bit darker than the 8 to 9. Now 5 to 8 is also going up 3 notches, but it doesn't seem like it's quite as much of a jump. But just think, the higher the number, the darker the value. All of our undertones are still the same. So because we've got a red-violet, those are tricky to blend. So this is my tip for blending those more difficult colors. The first thing you want to do is prime an area. And by priming an area, I basically mean you kind of color in the area that you intend to blend with your lightest color. And that just kind of gives you a little bit of a launch pad or a blending pad there. Then we're going to go in with our next lightest color. So I will go light to dark on this first pass. Not really blending yet, getting it all over my hands as usual. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So then what I would do is I would start working back over that, going darkest to lightest, and then I would repeat darkest to lightest until I'm happy with the blend that I've achieved. And I overlap the previous color so that I get a nice blend. I'm still getting a little bit of a division between 2.5 and 2.8, so I'm just going to go over it again. I can neaten up. Also, if I'm going to do something where I prime the paper, meaning I color it with that lighter color first, if I'm going to do that, then I make sure I color within my lines a little bit, so I have a little area in case it bleeds out. I have a little space. RV28. And last we'll do the 9 again. And again, you can keep repeating this as long as you need to, but we have a pretty good blend there. So that would be my trick. Anytime you're doing any of these colors with like cool undertones, your purples, tealy blues, most greens blend pretty well, but the tealy ones might be a little more difficult, but definitely the reds. When you get into the warmer tones, like your yellows, your warm greens, your browns, they tend to blend pretty well just going to the dark to light effect. So there's how to use our new Ohuhu color numbering system. And now let's put it in action. Let's make a card. Before we pick our colors out, I want to share a couple different tips for you to get the best possible impressions from your rubber stamps. Now, if you don't have rubber stamps, you can always find Christmas coloring pages and print them out small using your inkjet printer, because your inkjet printer ink is actually compatible with Ohuhu Alcohol markers. It shouldn't smear if you print it out right there on cardstock. So there's another tip for you. So the first thing I want to recommend is using the right ink and making sure that you have a freshly inked ink pad. So these turned out really well because I had just re-inked my ink pad. But before then, I inked that same stamp, but I had my older ink pad. I just added some fresh new re-inker to it, and then I got this beautiful impression. So that's my first tip. Also, make sure the ink you use is alcohol marker compatible. I use the Tuxedo Black Memento ink pad. Memento actually comes in a lot of colors, and they're all alcohol marker safe. So I would recommend using that. Now, when I'm stamping, if I'm going to use a really detailed stamp like these house mouse stamps, rather than inking up my stamp and stamping it onto my paper, I actually ink it up, and then I would bring my paper to my stamp. So if I was doing this in a sketchbook, I would just set my stamp there, ink it up, and then press my paper on top. Now, if I'm using a clear stamps have a little bit more squish and are a little bit easier to get a good impression. I just make sure that I have a stamping block that's about the same size as the stamp I want to use. So if I wanted to use this big one here, I would match it to a block that's about the same size. Now, it's true that you can use a really large block with any size stamp, but you run the risk of getting ink on the outside. So the closer you can get to the size of your stamp with your clear block, the better. And with that, let's go on to choosing colors for our project. When you begin a paper crafting project, it is so much easier to choose your papers first and then choose the colors that you want to color in your stamped image. I found this beautiful collection of papers called Holiday Goodies from Die Cuts with a View. I'm not sure if it's still available, but use whatever paper you like and try to find a smattering of colors that you like. Now, because this is a collection, all the colors will go together pretty well. So as long as I match, like say, the colors in this page, it's going to go with whatever projects I do with these papers. Since we're going to be doing this house mouse image where he's painting the candy canes, I thought it would be really great to use this candy cane paper, and I want to match my reds to those reds. Now, looking through here, it's looking to me like the RO family is going to be working the best. So R, the red family, the subcategory O, that's that kind of that blending group. And then if I chose a couple of colors that were close to each other, like RO14, RO15, RO16, I'll have plenty to blend there. I'll be able to do the little inkwell as well as the stripes on the candy canes. I'll probably also want a gray to kind of base coat the edge of one candy cane to have a light source. I can see I've got a little highlight on that, so I could do a little gray shadow on the left side to give it a little more realism, but those colors are going to go really well. Now let's say I want to have a nice color for the mouse. I would want to match that with some of the browns in these papers, so that way if I decide to trim out something here and use it as an embellishment, it's going to look really nice. These are kind of yellowy browns here, so what I would do is I would look in kind of my earthy yellows, and I'm looking here and I see the Y4 category. Looks really nice. Y4, so that yellow, the blending group would be 4, and then for saturation I could go really light with that Y42 if I wanted to, or I could go all the way to a dark shadow with a Y416. That would be the darkest in the Y4 range, but we have a really big range there that we can use. Now I'd probably just stick with the earthier ones here for the mouse, but then if I had some other little accents that I wanted to do with those golds, that would work really well too, and they would all be in that same kind of matching group, which would look really nice together. And then if I wanted to do maybe if I want to vary the color on the candy canes and I want to get some greens in there, I could use these pretty greens that are kind of in the yellow green family there. Like I could go in the yellow green 2s here, yellow green 2.9 and 2.11 and 2.12, and get some really nice blends. Now it's not really a Christmas green, but it's going to go with my papers, and that's why I say find the paper first and choose your colors based on the papers you're going to use in your project, and then color your image with those colors. Because if I use that bright minty Christmas green, it's not going to look as nice with these papers as if I choose a green that's kind of already in that family. And then if I wanted some accents, there's those really beautiful blues there. They're kind of in the either the BGO family. Actually, I think in the BGO or the BG1 family would work really nice if I wanted some little accents, so that I could cut around some of those little embellishments and add them into my projects, my tags, my cards, whatever I want to do with these, all of these images I've stamped. I can color with those pre-selected colors and know that they're all going to match those papers, and I won't have to think so much as I go. That would be a really pretty one too, and I could use in all those colors in that little house there. You know, so that just gives you a lot of options. Start with your paper and then pick your markers and then do your coloring. Here's a look at the limited amount of markers we'll be using today. I'm starting off with 2 pale shades of gray, CG02 for my darkest shadow on the left side of the candy cane sticks, and CG01 for the overall perimeter shadow on both sides. That's going to help it look more rounded. I'm going to do that to each of the candy cane sticks and then let that dry before I do the red. While that's drying, I'm going to work on the mouse, and I'm starting off on the face, and I'm base coating in with warm ivory, Y42. I'll add a little blush with R16, which is a really pale, light salmon color. Now, I always refer back to my color charts when I'm deciding what colors to choose, because if you choose colors that are in a similar value range, despite the numbers, value range to one another, you can get colors that will blend pretty well. So if you take two colors that are a similar darkness, they'll blush together pretty easily, as you can see right here, even though they're from different color families. I'm also adding some of that pink in the ears to warm it up a bit. And I added the ivory color to the tail and feet as well. Now for the fur, I'm going to start off by base coating all the fur in Y413 Fawn. That's the lightest of the browns that I'm going to use for the fur. And that will give us a really nice base to work into. So when I'm getting towards the edge, I just try to flick out the marker a little bit so I get a little fuzzy effect. You can also do this with bullet tip markers or chisel tip markers, whatever you have. Now I'm going in with my darkest brown, the Y416 golden brown, and I'm adding a shadow around the edges. And again, this is going to make the mouse look a little plumper, just like we did on the candy canes. To make them rounder, we add shadow to the edges. And I'm also putting a shadow where the paintbrush would cast a shadow on his body. And then after I have the darker color down, I can go in with a mid-tone and just kind of flick in and kind of create a bridge between that darker color and the lighter color in the center. So I'm just kind of blending in that darker color with this medium brown, the sand brown, Y415. And if I feel like I need more blending at this point, I'll go back in with that lightest brown that I used, the fawn, Y413, and just blend that medium color in further into the body of the mouse. So that's a nice way to get a nice smooth blend when you are painting a little character. And you could also use tones of gray if you wanted to do a gray mouse instead of a brown mouse. Now another technique I like to do is called palette blending. So I'm using that ivory color from the face and some of the fawn, which is the lightest brown, from the body, and scribbling the darker color on a ceramic plate and then lifting it up with a lighter marker and using that to apply a very soft blushy shadow onto the darker areas. Now for the reds, I am using RO16 for my darkest red, RO15 for my medium, and RO14 for my lightest red. I'm starting in with the lightest red, RO14, here for this inkwell because it's going to be a lot easier with reds to prime the area with my lightest color first. That's that priming technique I showed you at the beginning of the video when we were blending the pink markers. Now notice that I didn't color all the way out to the edge when I did that. I left a little bit of a gap. That's because I don't want to overfill my lines with ink. If I go right up to the edge with the priming technique and then I go in with darker colors near the edge, it's going to feather beyond my stamped image, and I don't want that to happen. Now I am going in with my RO16, the darkest color, and putting in those really deep shadows. I can have a little more contrast when I'm doing something like this where it's something that's like ink and glass. It's okay to have a little bit harsher of lines, so I wanted to make sure I could preserve those really dark tones. And if I want to blend it together a little bit more, then I'll go in with my mid-tone, which is the RO15, which is kind of that beautiful Christmas red, and just kind of soften the edges a bit as needed. And by having some of those shadows around the edges, it's giving me a nice bit of depth, and by leaving the highlight unpainted, it gives me a nice shiny spot. But if you don't leave out your highlight, that's not a problem. You can go in with a white gel pen later and you can bring it up. Just a tip, when you're using your white gel pens over colors like reds and purples, sometimes the colors will leach up and you'll need to let the gel pen dry and then put another coat of white on it to make it show up. Now for the candy canes, I am doing a dark to light technique because I don't have a lot of space in there, and if I prime it and then go over, it's just going to bleed everywhere, and it's pretty challenging to get into these small details as it is, so I don't want my paints to overblend. Here you can see again from a different angle, I'm just going in with my darkest color and going dark to light here because it's a small area, not like the ink bottle where I needed that larger area to blend. I just have tiny little areas. So the smaller the area, the less likely I'm going to want to do the palette blending. I did make a very wide stripe there, but honestly, if you make a mistake like that, don't fret. Just keep on going. Nobody is going to look at that and say, huh, why is that stripe so much wider? Nobody's going to notice. They're going to just be so thrilled that they got a handmade Christmas card, and they're not even going to notice any mistakes you make. You are the only one that really notices them. So especially with something like an intricately colored house mouse image on a card, you want to make sure you use all those images. You don't want to throw one away when you're halfway coloring because it takes some time, and trust me, everyone's going to love your cards. And you can see as I go over with my lighter tones, we really get that depth and that roundness to the candy cane, which is what I'm going for. Also, don't fret if your ink smudges out of the lines a little bit. It's going to happen. In fact, if you had the bullet tip version of these markers, I would use the bullet tip on those candy canes. To help me achieve a nice straight smooth edge on this brush, I'm using the chisel end of the BG011 marker here, and that's going to be my shadow side, so I'm using that darker color. And for a highlight, I'm going to use BG09. Now, if you notice on these house mouse stamps, and probably in some of the rubber stamps on your stash, is they have stippling where your shadows go. So if you're ever confused as to where to put your darker colors, look for the stippling on your design, and that can help guide you to where you want to put those shaded areas. Repeat colors whenever you can when you're working in a design. Here I'm using the CG01 and CG02, those very light grays from the beginning that we used on our candy cane, to add subtle shading to the ferrule of the brush and also the glass and the inkwell. I also use that to add some shadows under the mouse in the stippled areas. So repetition is key to keep a beautifully harmonious design. Now you may find that you've got some edges that are a little bit soft or fuzzy and you want to sharpen them up. Any fine liners are going to work great for that. They won't smudge your alcohol ink, and you can really fill the gaps really easily, and you don't have to have a perfect match. I also like to use white gel pens to clean up any overspill of my ink, which is bound to happen, and to add those pretty shiny spots on my design to really make the image come to life like I did for the highlights on these candy canes. I think it's such a fun effect, and all you need is a gel pen. I like to keep my card making pretty simple when I go to the effort to color a house mouse design card because I really want the coloring to kind of steal the show. I'm using a ink pad. This is another one of those Memento inks that are alcohol marker safe. This is the color Bamboo Shoots, and I'm just using it to ink the edges of the main panel that we just colored as well as a sentiment. I'm adding a strip of adhesive down on my paper and a strip of that paper that we had color matched to earlier. All the papers I'm using are from that paper pad that we matched our colors to begin with. And I love to use baker's twine on Christmas cards, and these nice thin embellishments are going to make it so I can mail this card without additional postage. So I've got string that's not too thick, and we're going to use a brad as well. I like to use a piercing tool anytime I want to add a brad to a card. It just saves you from getting the card all bent up as you put in a paper fastener. And then if I want to make my stuff match perfectly, my embellishments match perfectly, I'll take my marker that I used to color the candy canes and color the brad. And then I have a perfect matching accessory every time. Now that the panel is all decorated, I'm going to put some adhesive across the back and then glue that down to a card front. Now I like to do all of the embellishing on a card panel first, because that way if I want to poke a hole to add a brad or an eyelet or wrap string, that way I can tuck all that away neatly behind the decorated card panel and then glue it down to my card base and have a nice framed border there from the cardstock base. And I just think that looks so cute. It's very simple, but honestly, once you've spent a lot of time coloring, do you want to have anything else stealing the show? I did punch out a couple other embellishments from that pattern paper pack, but I didn't really think it added much to it. So instead I took some scraps and decorated the inside of the card and used one of those punch outs in there. And I think that looked totally cute. And that also makes it so I don't have quite so much space I need to fill when I write in it, which is helpful because I'm at a loss for words when I write in cards for some reason. You'd never know it with the way I talk normally, but for writing things into a cards, I'm always at a loss of what to say. But there you have it. There is our completed card. I hope you found these color tips handy, and I hope you give this a try in your next project. I will have links to Ohuhu in the video description. They're running their Black Friday sale right now, and I have a coupon code so you can save some money on your order no matter what time of year it is. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Ohuhu for sponsoring this video. And until next time, happy crafting.